These are real people that we're talking about. This is a family. This is a person in Usha Vance who, has her own life and her own faith and heritage. And it's a little odd to see this kind of coming out in public. On the other hand, look, he was at an event that was definitely rooted in Christianity, and the whole Charlie Kirk and Turning Point situation definitely has Christian roots and overtones. I think if people are speculating, if people are sort of making this into a tabloid story, it is because of these remarks that J.D. Vance made.
Let's introduce our guest. Joining me on Global Pulse tonight is Dr. David Richards. He's the chair of political science at the University of Lynchburg, Virginia, in the United States. Thanks very much, Dr. Richards, for joining me on the show. Let me begin by asking you, what did you make of those comments by J.D. Vance, where he practically stated he hopes that his Hindu wife will eventually convert to Christianity? Now, no prizes for guessing that J.D. Vance is pandering to the MAGA base. But fact is that these comments have sparked a fair degree of outrage both in the United States and here in India, with many saying that in the pursuit of power, as he positions himself for 2028, J.D. Vance seems to have practically thrown his wife under the bus. How do you look at it?
Yes, well, it was a little disconcerting to hear the vice president talk about his family and his wife in that way. As you said before, he walked into this marriage as equal partners with his wife, and certainly knowing full well about her heritage and her background and her religion. That said, the career of J.D. Vance has been one where he has been willing often to change, to embrace new ideas. He converted from evangelical religion to Catholicism. He has definitely changed his mind about the capacity and the sort of character of Donald Trump. Is this yet another calculation on his part in order to move his chess piece across the board? These are real people that we're talking about. This is a family. This is a person in Usha Vance who, has her own life and her own faith and heritage. And, it's a little odd to see this kind of coming out in public. On the other hand, look, he was at an event that was definitely rooted in Christianity, and, the whole Charlie Kirk and Turning Point situation definitely has Christian roots and overtones. So maybe he felt like he had to sort of, show his credentials or show his seriousness. It's a little confusing.
So let me ask you this. There is no doubt J.D. Vance is a very ambitious man who is positioning himself as a potential candidate for the 2028 race. The question is, Dr. Richards, will Usha Vance, a woman of Indian origin and Hindu heritage, ever be acceptable as First Lady of the United States of America to the MAGA crowd, which, as I said earlier, is really obsessed with Christian nationalism and, if I may add, also white supremacy? Is that something that would be weighing heavily on J.D. Vance's mind, do you think?
Well, there is that question about the base, but I think the larger question or the larger issue is the United States as a whole, of course, is a very big country. It's a very diverse country, and it is changing fairly rapidly. I think all we have to do is look at the current election in Virginia to see that we have, a West Indian, a Caribbean woman running for governor, a white woman running for governor. We have an Indian American running for lieutenant governor. We have, Hispanic and an African American running for attorney general. Very diverse tickets. The question is, on the Republican side, for example, in Virginia, with a West Indian woman running for governor and a Hispanic running for attorney general, if they lose, did they not turn out that Republican base or that MAGA base because they weren't white, or was it something else? And what lesson does the Republican Party take away from that election going into 2028? Do they see then Usha as perhaps some sort of barrier to overcome because look what happened in Virginia? Or do they say, look, what happened in Virginia was sort of a one off thing, and Usha is as you pointed out, she's an American, she's well educated, she is, a very vibrant person. She has clearly been an asset to J.D. Vance this entire time as he has risen up in the ranks politically. She has been by his side. She has been supporting him and evidently very instructive behind the scenes. So, I would hope that the GOP would look at this and say, here's an opportunity to show that we are a diverse party in a diverse country, and that the sort of accusations of white nationalism maybe are overblown. Otherwise, it looks like the accusations are correct, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Like you said, it was frankly disconcerting to hear him say the things that he did, because it did seem to suggest that, he does not respect his wife's faith, at least not at this point in time, as he pursues power, and is hoping to bring her around, as he put it, to his own religion, which does reek, frankly, of, Christian supremacy. So let me ask you this. While I know that this is in the realm of speculation, but it is important because, after all, this is the Vice President of the United States of America that we're talking about, who is positioning himself as a potential future president of the country. As we get closer to the 2028 presidential race, do you believe that we could see Usha Vance coming under increasing pressure from her husband in the MAGA base to perhaps convert to Christianity? And if she refuses, then as far as the future of the marriage is concerned, would you say all bets are then off? Because the speculation, frankly, has reached that level now.
Yeah, and I think it is, of course, at this point, speculation. A little background to J.D. Vance's history coming out of evangelical Christianity, whose main point is to convert as many people as possible to Christianity. So he has that sort of background, right? It doesn't make it right. I'm just saying this is his background. And so to imagine that, there would be no pressure on Usha at all to convert, if for no other reason, the political optics of it, would be naive, right? So I do agree with you that she, might be under some pressure. Yeah, look, you hate to sort of think that way, but she is intelligent as a woman. She is, obviously come a long way as a person, and I just would imagine that if she said no, then what do they do, right? How do they handle it? Ideally, of course, in the best possible world, her faith is not the issue, right? It is if J.D. Vance is running for president, what is his policy positions? What is he going to bring to the job? That's what we should focus on. Unfortunately, we will probably not focus on that as much if it becomes an issue about, should she convert? Why isn't she converting? What is going on? That can kind of overwhelm the conversation then.
Unfortunately, identity politics, has really become so predominant in MAGA-dominated America today. Dr. Richards, I hate to bring this up, and we do not engage in tabloid journalism, but this is something that we have to talk about because there's just been so much chatter around this on social media in recent days, with people with public opinion being divided down the middle. Now, many are saying that Vance's remarks about Usha's faith by themselves should be enough to put strain on the marriage. Many are speculating what might also be putting strain on the marriage are the recent pictures of J.D. Vance with Erica Kirk. They appeared on stage at the same event. They were seen in a close embrace. And a lot is being made of those images, J.D. Vance with his arms around her, the two of them sort of interacting with each other with a great degree of familiarity. And then, to make matters worse, there is also that statement she made, which is doing the rounds on the social media, where she says, well, I see similarities between my late husband and J.D. Vance. There are many who are wondering what this means, really, for the marriage of the Vice President of the United States of America. I wonder what you make of this controversy and all the chatter that we've seen on the social media.
Yeah, so of course, who knows, right? But look, the vice president brought this on himself by making those comments, and I think Erica Kirk's comments didn't help too much. I mean, I think she was being fairly innocuous. I don't really read too much into that, but look, none of this was being discussed. There was no sort of hint that there would be any problems within JD Vance's marriage, within that the fact that they were from different faiths until he brought this up. So I think if people are speculating, if people are sort of making this into a tabloid story, it is because of these remarks that JD Vance made. How are we, are we supposed to just ignore them and not sort of say, oh, okay, we hadn't thought about that, but now that you mention it, is this an issue? Is this something to worry about? And it's, of course, marriage is between two people and it's a private affair. And so personally, I wish them the best. And I hope that this is not some sort of sign of a problem. They seem like a great family. They have obviously, two very nice children. I wish them the best is all I can say.
I have to agree with you that J.D. Vance seems to have brought this upon himself. The reason why people are speculating is because he made some pretty controversial statements, and up till then, perhaps nobody had even thought of this as an issue. But my heart goes out to Usha Vance, honestly, and I'm not saying this because she's a woman of Indian origin, but for her to be in the spotlight and to be put in this very awkward situation and to be subjected to so much public scrutiny. As some believe her marriage might be unraveling right before our eyes, and I certainly hope that is not the case. Where does this leave Usha Vance, somebody who's obviously stood by J.D. Vance through thick and thin? They met at Yale College long before he entered political or public life. Where does this leave her as he prepares for his political future, looking ahead at 2028? And also, Dr. Richards, there are many who are wondering what this means for the larger Indian American community in the United States of America, many of whom are Hindus, many of whom, as you know, are very well assimilated in not just American society but American politics as well.
Yes, I think look, where does this leave Usha Vance? Hopefully this means that she will, be able to kind of settle the issue and move on from that with her husband, JD Vance. They are in many ways a power couple. They have come up together into his success. I think they both worked at it. So I am sure that she wants to continue to do that. As to your broader question about, the Indian diaspora in the United States, I think this is a significant question. I think most Americans, and myself, I will include, are very sort of sketchy about what it means to be Indian and the fact that there are Hindu Indians and Muslims and many, many other faiths in this, diaspora that we tend to sort of not understand exactly where they are coming from and what they bring to the table. And so maybe this is a moment, an opportunity that Americans can say, okay, there's a rich culture, a rich history. These people have, faith and bring so much to the table. How do we engage with that? How do we appreciate that instead of just saying, okay, this is some sort of other that we need to change or make somehow different so that we are comfortable with it, instead of saying, let's embrace it as something, that can contribute to the United States. And, my hope is that maybe after all of this dust settles and people say, okay, so she is not Christian, she is Hindu, and that's okay, because that's just another faith that we can bring into the United States as part of our diversity and culture.
I really wish the MAGA crowd would look at it that way, Dr. Richards, but let's face it, the MAGA movement is not exactly known to be crazy about diversity or multiculturalism. How exactly would you describe this moment in American politics? I mean, many, of course, have described the second election of Donald Trump and sort of the catapulting into the spotlight of the MAGA movement as a watershed moment and a turning point for American society and politics. And perhaps this is a change that's going to be a lasting one. But how would you describe this moment in American politics?
I think we are at an inflection point. If all you have to do is go out into the United States and you see the immense diversity we already have, whether or not you are comfortable with it. And I think for the MAGA crowd, they're sort of fighting the wind at this point, right? They are trying to sort of stop something that is coming down the pike, and maybe they can make some sort of last stand. But look, it's sort of inevitable, right? That the United States changes. It has changed since day one all the time. So to expect it not to change, to sort of be frozen in amber at this point, I think it's not realistic. But yeah, when I talk to people out there, especially people who are Donald Trump supporters, they tell me things, and you kind of have to cringe. But look, this is their worldview, that they want to preserve what they feel is their universe of being Christian, being white, and whether or not that is reality, they are going to fight that, and that's something that I think we're going to have to struggle with over the next decade or so in this country. I don't see us going backwards, but I think people are going to want to sort of, keep the tide at bay, which, and I don't know how easy it is to keep the tide at bay, right? You can't do that.
Right. Fact is that racism and white supremacy and even xenophobia, frankly, always have existed in American society. And that is, of course, true everywhere around the world. But perhaps it would be correct to say that it's more deeply entrenched today than ever before. And, Donald Trump's term may end 3 years from now. But the changes he's brought about in American society and polity could be very long-lasting ones. This seems to have really cast a dark and long shadow on the country. Before we let you go, let me ask you this question, Dr. David Richards. How do you see the 2028 presidential contest shaping up? How strong a candidate do you believe somebody like J.D. Vance is really likely to be? And can we now be completely assured that Donald Trump will not make another run for president in 2028. He's been, doling out Trump for 2028 merchandise at the White House. He's also said on camera, I'd love to do it. Before he said just a few days ago, I don't think I can. The Constitution doesn't allow it. We really hope that he gets it once and for all, that the Constitution does not allow it.
Yeah. So, at this point, it looks like no third term for Trump, but never say never, I guess, on that. So we'll see what changes, from hour to hour. Look, 2028 right now, it is sort of J.D. Vance's to lose. I'm not sure he's the strongest candidate. I'm not sure that a lot of Trump supporters will necessarily transfer their affection, as it were, over to J.D. Vance. But we'll see as things go along. Look, I'm in a state right now, Virginia, where Governor Youngkin is ending his term. He's going to wrap it up because he's not allowed to run for a second term. So he will be twiddling his thumbs. He's been put forth as a possible candidate. He might be a more attractive alternative to the MAGA folks. But yeah, look, it's J.D. Vance's to lose at this point. So we'll see. Thankfully, 2028 is a long way off. We have to get through the Virginia election tomorrow and then the midterms in 2 years. So we still have a little ways to go before we have to make up our minds about 2028.
Absolutely correct. Plenty of time to go. But I think the way Trump goes on and on about how he would love to be president for a third time again is already making a lot of people nervous. And therefore, I think the feverish speculation about 2028. But you're right, we definitely have the midterms before that. Well, a lot could change in a year's time. Who knows? This is politics that we're talking about. Strange things are known to have happened. Well, on that note, Dr. David Richards, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for joining me on Global Pulse.